What I wanted to do was kind of recap and take these same three themes that I presented to your girls about accepting the unknown with a smile and keeping your eyes and your ears and your heart open and doing your best as truths that, I think that we as parents, I'm a parent now, I have a boy though, so we have, these are things that we as parents can also apply to ourselves, not only for us as parents to live by these truths, but to also help develop it within your own children. So the first one with this accepting the unknown with a smile, you guys heard my story when I was a kid, and my parents were certainly influencers of the interests that I had, where I spent my spare time. And I think as parents, helping your child identify something that they enjoy. And I kind of joked about my mom saying, oh yeah, I want to learn piano. And I did piano probably from the time I was like really little, and other types of music. And I could say I half enjoyed it. I wasn't like I hated it or anything, but it just wasn't something I got into. But I would think that my parents, didn't ask him this, but I would think that when my parents saw me at a sporting event, when we were playing these games, that there was just this, massive energy that I would have. And I think that as parents, spotting that and identifying it, and no matter what it is, particularly at this age, helping them find something that they enjoy. Because like I said, even though I didn't turn out to be an athlete or an artist by trade, the skills that I learned, I would say I absolutely apply today, right? I learned what it feels like to lose. Like I learned what it feels like to work hard at something and learn. I learned what it was like to work as a team with that person playing their role. And when they didn't play their role, what the implication of that was to the rest of the team. And so it doesn't really matter, is kind of my point, is let them find something that they enjoy and maybe help them, like look at their eyes and see the passion and the fire and go, okay, like let's help them develop those indirect skills. So that's kind of my first point on this particular topic. I think the other thing is parents can release some of the pressure. I talk, and maybe it's not at this age yet, but as the children get a little older, I did talk to some high school girls in a different thing before about STEM, and we had a little breakout, and there were some teenage girls that came up to me, and I was talking to them about jobs and careers and all this other stuff. And one of the, I asked, like, what do you think you want to do? I don't know. And I was like, what do your parents say? And they said, oh, my mom and my dad, they really want me to do this or do that. I was like, be a doctor or do, whatever. And the amount of pressure that they had, and one of the girls actually told me that her parents were filling up job boards and saying, hey, would you want to do that? Would you want to do this? And they don't know. Like, I was just like, you can really, I'm not saying you're doing that, but I think the pressure starts to mount, right? And sometimes that pressure is because you as a parent have some identity back to your child. And it's completely normal, and I'm not gonna stand here and tell you how to parent, because that's certainly not my place. But I do think that as parents, we can release some of the pressure. They're already gonna face a lot of pressure, and by maybe releasing it from ourselves, right? And saying, as a parent, I'm gonna let it go a little bit. Because like I said, and then the bullet point in the blue is that, to be honest, the jobs that your child is gonna have by the time they get into the workforce probably doesn't even exist today. I mean, there was no Salesforce when I was in 7th grade. And so you don't know what that is, but the skills I learned, those indirect skills, teach people to be like, you're gonna learn, you're gonna grow, and it's okay to not know. It's okay to not know, like, in 20 years, I'm gonna be an entrepreneur, or I'm gonna do Salesforce, or I'm gonna do any kind of technology or any kind of science thing. So that was kind of my point here. And what I'd like to do is maybe I'll get through them, and then you guys we can roll back to some of these. The next one about keeping your ears, your eyes, and your heart open is this point about the first bullet here is like, you don't have to be in STEM to help your child have an open mind to this type of career path. As I mentioned, my dad was in the military. My mom was predominantly, I would say, a stay-at-home mom. She had like jobs periodically, obviously a different generation, but still, they weren't in STEM, but he actually was a contributor to why I changed my degree. And so I think that as parents, we might see an idolized job or something like that, or might feel like, oh, well, if they don't see me doing that, they might not do it. I just want you to know, like, my parents certainly did not have technology jobs. So I don't think you should feel like you would. I'm not saying you do, maybe you don't. but it was certainly him that influenced it. But what did influence my dad to make that comment, which I didn't say to the girls, was in our neighborhood back in Texas, there was a guy that lived next to us, and he was an IT professional. And it was, again, like in the 90s, like mid to late 90s when I was in college. And he was the one that told my dad, because I guess they're having, garage talk or whatever you want to call it. And he's like, oh, what's Deena majoring in? And he said, like, international business or whatever I was doing at that time. And he was like, she should really consider changing her degree for these reasons. And he laid out, like, there's just so many jobs, the market's so big, and there's so much opportunity, and it could really be this or that. And he probably blew it up, but my dad didn't come back to me with, like, you need to change your blah, 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 so-and-so said this. But he did tell me casually, hey, he's got a really good job, and he said that there's a ton of opportunities at the companies that he's working at and what he's seeing as an IT professional. And it just got me thinking. I mean, I didn't like instantly go, yes, I'm changing my major, but sometimes it's those outside forces, and it was my dad that influenced it, but it's weird because he didn't actually live it. And so that's kind of the second part of my bullet, is introducing other concepts to children. I mean, I think the world is obviously a much different place than it was when I was their age. But I feel like right now there's so much access. There's so much ways that we can share. Here's an idea, here's a thing, and just educate. They don't necessarily have to bite on everything, but giving them perspective. And that's what the keeping your ears, eyes, and heart open is, looking around you and seeing, hey, maybe that thought that, my daughter might be this might change in 3 years. Maybe you're gonna think, oh, maybe she wants to do this now. Let me show her about it. If she doesn't want to, that's fine. But having that constant, not just having your head down all the time, but sort of looking up and evaluating yourself. And that is the third one, is yourself, right? Is her as an individual, and us as parents being able to help them learn to self-assess, right? Help them learn to say, wow, when you played that game, you were really good at this, and you were really nice when you encouraged somebody else, or when you covered for that other team member, or when you did something, like help them see their own strengths, because it's a lesson that we have to develop as adults, right? Like there's times when I'm like, ooh, yeah, I'm just not good at this, but what I am good at is these other things. And so that skill, and I definitely think, gotta give props to the parents where due, they definitely encouraged me. They absolutely told me when I did something well and when maybe I didn't do something so well. And that balance probably is needed as well, but I think it's important to help children from an early age start to learn how to self-assess. And they learn that by hearing from you and hearing from others around them, this is something you're really good at. And that's the key point under here is, we've all heard I think it's a quote that came from an African proverb or something, it takes a village to raise a child. And it's true, like when I think about all the outside forces, and I'm sure you guys too in your own lives and jobs from the time you were a kid, it's all those little outside things that you don't think are really gonna make a huge difference. They can. All right, so the next one is doing your best. So for me, I believe in confidence, especially for young girls. And it's this equation where you have something you like, passion, it makes you want to practice it. It makes you want to get better at it. And you establish confidence. I mean, it's a simple math equation. And I've talked to a lot of women who are older, right, in their careers, and sometimes they lack a lot of confidence. And I'll tell them, go find even if it's some sliver of Salesforce or any technology that you work on, and get good at that. Then you can walk into the room and have the confidence of knowing, I know this piece. So sometimes and like I said, I've heard from probably men and women too, but confidence is such a big thing to build. And if you can teach that equation from the early age, where it's like, okay, if you see something they like, they'll want to practice, encourage them to keep practicing and getting better. And that's like, wow, their confidence just goes way up. And then the encouragement thing. My mom maybe she was bloating my ego when I was a little kid, but she was certainly an encourager and always saying, Deena, whatever you want to be, you could do. You have a lot of abilities, you have a lot of talents, just apply yourself. And she's like, oh, you did that good. And I think she maybe bloated my ego to an extent, like I said, but I think that having an encourager and calling that out with honesty. I mean, there were probably times when she just kind of kept her mouth shut when I didn't do something so great. Probably with piano, who knows? But I think it's important to, be that. I think we naturally are that as parents. We're just wanting to encourage our kids. We want them to be more than they maybe are. I'm sure my mom maybe thought I would be something else. But I think she was really good about saying, you have a lot of talents. You have a lot of abilities. You can do whatever you want. You just have to apply yourself. You have to try. You have to put yourself out there. And doing is so critical, because we won't go anywhere. We'll go nowhere if we don't do something, even if it's some small step. But there was a part of me when I was preparing for this that I thought, I can't teach you guys how to be parents. I'm not in that place. I can't be that person. But what I can tell you is any kind of personal experience that I've had that I felt influenced me from my parents, and things that I've seen and heard in more recent times that I've noticed students kind of grappling with and feeling in their own space. And that comment that I made about the parents of the high school girls, I mean, looking through job boards and picking on these things, I'm like, gosh, by the time you graduate, even in 4 or 5 years, I don't know that those jobs are even going to be there anymore. And they feel a lot of pressure. I mean, those were high schoolers, and it was probably different. But if I can share anything like that or any perspective, I'm happy to provide anything. I'm gonna pause, and I can let it open up for questions, and I can come back and talk about a couple other things. But I wanted to make sure I wasn't saying things that were like, oh yeah, we heard that already, or thanks a lot, appreciate the information that I already know. So I'm sorry to put you guys on the spot. I'm gonna open it up for questions.
Hi.
Hello.
My name is Jean. My daughter is 11 years old, and she has a huge interest in science, not so much the math. But my question, I guess, to you, my wife was also, when she was in the Air Force, she did a lot of IT stuff, which turned out to be heavily male-centric. Mm-hmm. So she battled with a lot of challenges just being a woman in that career field. And I was just wondering if you have any information or stories in that same realm and how you overcame that, because I know that, for my wife, she's a very strong-headed and confident person, but my daughter is just a little bit more reserved. Mm-hmm. So I don't know if you have any way to or stories to share with that.
No, that's a really good question, and it comes up a lot. It'd be maybe hard to imagine now, but I was actually a pretty big introvert. I mean, from the time I was little, I wasn't super crazy or outgoing or anything like that. I was always shy. And even when I started my career in technology as a software engineer, I was pretty in my little space, tell me what you need, I'll go code some stuff, right? I wasn't out there. And now, after I started the business, I obviously I had to get out and sell, and I had to be a different type of person, and I developed a set of skills. But before all of that, thinking back to earlier in time, I was also introverted. And just because I showed those signs of, maybe your daughter is showing that sign. I mean, I don't know if your wife was always kind of outgoing and very, confident. Maybe she's just naturally that person. I don't think I was. I'll say that. I absolutely wasn't when I was little. And even, like I said, early in my career. And it wasn't until I started, so I worked, they use the phrase in consulting, industry versus consulting. So consulting is when you're a third party and you're consulting another organization. Industry means you work for the actual company. So I worked for companies, and I was working with consultants, through all these things. I switched my career and became a consultant, probably about maybe 3 or 4 years into starting my career journey. And at that point, I remember there was a woman who interviewed me. She was an amazing woman. And this was when I was living in Dallas, and I got the job, which was great. After I got the job, she reached out to me, and I was on a project with a client in Austin at the time, so I had to go there. And she called me and she told me, Deena, I'm going to tell you, you need to have a seat at the table. You need to raise your voice. You need to say something. And she pushed me, and she said that, and I was like, I've always been I do my thing, and I'm okay at what I do. I got the job. I can program things, I can be analytical, I can solve problems, but she pushed me, and she said, you need to have a voice. You need to have a seat at the table. And the men at the table, no offense to the guys, because I like guys a lot, but She was like, they're gonna just talk. They're gonna say a lot of things, and you can get drowned out if you don't say something. And so it was my moment of like recognizing that I need to step up. I need to say something. I need to learn my thing so I can walk into the room. And over the course of my career as a consultant, I remember some men would even say to me, you're not like the other girls, like you actually know what you're talking about. And the thing is, I think the women knew. They just didn't say it. They just didn't say anything. And so that would be my backstory. I mean, I was still sort of quiet, even in the midst of that. And definitely still, I think I'm a naturally sort of introverted. But, you know, that would be my story on that and kind of how it evolved for me. And then now of us starting the company, you have no choice but to, you know, put yourself out there. So I kind of broke down some of the shyness over the years. But even now, like, I think people see me, like, they're like, oh, I've got all these social posts, got a podcast going, I have all these things happening. And people that knew me back then are like, God, you were just this, like, shy, quiet person. I never, you know, you were so quiet, and what happened to you? And I think, you know, bursting out of that shell and giving them the confidence to know it. And that's why that equation, to me, is just the key, because until I learned something, did I feel confident enough to say something at the table. So that's my thing on that. Any other comments or questions?
My name's Tim. My daughter's Addison. She's going into 7th grade next year, and you know, I love science and technology, and I'm always talking about it with her, you know, with a passion. As much as I'm into it, I'm kind of scared for her, because I guess I don't want her to get in arenas that might not go down a negative path, or something that won't be as inspirational. I guess I want to be really efficient in what I'm trying to tell her. And it's all new to me. I feel like I'm just starting over again, because like you were saying, technology is constantly changing, but that makes it really scary. It's exciting, but it's scary at the same time.
So that's a really good point. And I don't know if I can 100% relate, because the world is a different place than it was. Yeah, I mean, right now, my son's 6 years old, and I'm sitting here going, like, what's going to happen, you know, when they get older? And there's so much new stuff in technology. I don't know if I necessarily have the exact answer, but I think I would say, maybe not overcomplicating it. I mean, I think you know this, right? It's like, you want to do it, and you're just going to have to monitor it and be close on it and do what you can to continue to show that. And I think demonstrating by example how you handle certain things is also kind of key. I think my parents were really good about, like, okay, this isn't right, we're changing gears, right? So I think seeing some of that and staying close to it is key. The one thing I'll add, and I don't know if this helps or not, there is a Salesforce thing called Trailhead. And what it is, it's kind of a gamification where people can learn Salesforce through gamification. It's completely free. And so we're doing 2 sessions today on how to build a lemonade stand app. And what it teaches children is how to think about something in business, because that's what I do, right? You think about your business, you're like, okay, what's my process? I need to sell lemonade, right? That's your business. And then the other side of it is what Salesforce do. And so they're giving like a quick, very simple, like, this is what Salesforce is about to just help them build the system. And then they're going to go in and actually configure the product. And what it does is gamification, where they can go through these different trails and start to gain some confidence to learn what technology is all about today. Because I don't know what type of technology you're after. If it's programming's changed dramatically. Like, it's not all code. It's a combination of platform-based configuration and code and creative, and like so many other things are kind of all together now on technology. So depending on what you want to do, that might be something to consider. Is all of those girls that go to those sessions will walk away with their account set up with Trailhead, so they can go back and even do more training. And there's a lot of kids that are on that now, and, like, you know, getting all these little badges, and you know, it's good learnings, and it gives them some perspective on what it means to build something, because you go through like a little exercise and you've built an application. So that's one thing, but I certainly, you know, depending on what kind of technology you want to expose, you're right, it's tricky, super challenging, and just staying close to it is the only thing I can say, because I can't relate 100% to that.
Hi, my name is Shannon. I have 4 kids, and age 8 to 14. And what I notice the most with all of them is they have very little distress tolerance. when something goes wrong, math homework, whatever, I have a question, I Google the question, I have the answer. And when that's not readily available to them, it's the end of the freaking world. So how do you as a parent, and then you as a leader of, our kids will be the next ones coming up in your business, do you have suggestions of how we help them build that outside of do your homework? Look up the answer.
Does anybody else feel that too? Like just the distress tolerance levels? Yeah, it probably is part of the new environment, right? It's like, I felt like I was bored like half of my childhood, but now it's like there's just constant, there's constant engagement and there's always something going on. So there's an aspect of that changing, but I think for helping them learn it is maybe just maybe letting them bomb out a little bit, that sounds bad. Where it's reasonable and right, obviously you don't want to get them in trouble. But I think there's an element of, okay, well, here's what happened, here's the consequence. Or I don't know if that's where you're going, if it's more that, or if it's more just like, if I don't have something, I just don't know. Is that what it is? I just want to make sure I'm answering the question the right way.
They're paralyzed and can't even move through that moment.
Yeah, like if they don't have an answer to something? Okay. I would say, and again, I'm not a parent at all ages, but working through it, I can say that I do that with my team now. I have a lot of millennials and younger. Some of them are on the team that are younger than millennial, and they're good. Everybody's good, but even the older, everybody really. When you have that moment, help them problem solve it. Okay, great. Now what do we do? Let me think through this. Instead of tell them the answer, that's what I do with my own staff. Is I'll sit down with them and say, okay, great, we have a problem. Let's figure it out. Did we try this? Did we do this? Help. What do you think we should do next? What do we do about this? And help them start to develop how to problem solve when those challenges come. It's tough because it depends on the use cases, of things that are happening. But I can say that for my staff, that's how I develop them when they get in this moment, oh my God, I don't know what to do. Well, let's sit down and problem solve together.
Hi. Does Pacific Point have any programs for young girls?
Not specifically. What we do is we have college internship programs that are typically when students are 1 year away from graduation or less. And then we also did once, it's a lot of work, so it's kind of hard to sort of figure out what's the right balance of all of this. But last summer we did have a high school intern that was, I think he was 6 feet 2 inches. So it was I was wow, you're 17 years old, I don't get it. But he came in and did an internship program through the Hawaii STEM Works, which is the conference that Dr. Schroeder had mentioned. And so that's kind of the program that we had where we signed up as a sponsor company. We had them come in for the summer and we gave them a set of things to do. And it just had by chance was a kid, Ethan was his name, he was great. And so that ended up happening. But as far as girls go, I don't have anything specific. Hawaii STEM Works, I think, is a really great program. They have their conference coming up in May. And so my team gets involved usually with their professional mentoring. But these are really young. Really young to maybe, I would say the majority are pretty young. So if you're looking for opportunities for the young, I would say maybe Hawaii STEM Works is a good program. But as you get older, then the internships and the other sorts of programs start to come into play. High school, I just think there was nothing like this when I was a kid. I don't remember. I don't know if you guys had this stuff. But I'm that it's great that there's opportunities like this, and it's awesome that you guys look out for it. But I would say check Hawaii STEM Works and see what they've got going on. Like I said, it's coming up in May, and I think it's 2 days at the Hawaii Convention Center.
Do you have any skills that you attribute to being a military kid that have helped you now in your career?
The military lifestyle was really cool. From the time I was born, we moved every 2 years, probably until I was about 10. So it was pretty young until my dad just said, this is probably not right for the kids, because my older brother he's 4 years older than me, so it was just, I think personal levels, they just reached that point where it's probably not, they felt from their side that it wasn't in the best interest of the family. But nevertheless, I think that it gave a lot of perspective. I think you see a lot of different things. I don't know what the terms are now, but back then it was 2 years. So you see different things. I think the other thing is meeting people and making new friends quickly. It's hard. I think between me and my older brother, because my little brother, who I showed in the other picture, he's much younger than me, if you couldn't tell. And so we didn't grow up as much together, but me and my older brother grew up together. And I would say that he had a harder time maybe finding friends. I had a less harder time. And I think that it's tough when you switch and then it's like, okay, I got to start all over again and build up my friend network and like meet people again and like let people know who I am. And I think that's a skill that I was able to gain just by being part of a military family at that point. I think it also creates a bond with your family. Like, I think when you're solo coming into a new place, you definitely have the network of the military. The military is great as a support network, but I think it creates a nice bond for a family, and I feel like that was a good moment for me to experience, the family really coming together and being like, yeah, we're coming in new, starting over, now we're gonna pick up all our stuff and we're gonna move again and go through all that. So I would say I liked the military. I had fun. I mean, there's always kids and stuff happening and all of that. But as far as how it influenced me, I would say it was good to just have a change. And maybe that's why today, like, I enjoy consulting. And the reason I like consulting is because when I worked in what they call industry, I would get bored. I'd be like, it's just like, okay, great. I learned your industry and I've implemented some systems and it's just the same thing. And so I want to learn about a new customer. I want to learn something new. And maybe some of that was attributed to the experiences that I had where I liked that constant, like, what's new, what's next, what's happening for them. And part of it's personality, but that was certainly what I would say I gained from that experience.
What do you think we should make sure that our kids walk away with when they graduate so that they're successful?
As far as the key EQ type things or soft skills or whatever you want to refer to them as. It's funny because now that I have a 6-year-old, I was asked a similar question from the teacher. What do you want your child to make sure he learns? And I kind of wondered, like, what were other people writing? And I said, be kind. I want my kid to learn how to be kind. And no matter where you are, right, you get far along in your career, and you can have a certain style and you can have a certain way of doing things, but when you come from a place of, I want to be kind, I want to be considerate of other people, that doesn't mean that you're a pushover. You can still be a strong person, but be kind. And I don't know what the other parents were writing, but that was, when I read that, I was like, gosh, what is that one thing that I really want to make sure he learns throughout his time in kindergarten, because he's in kindergarten right now. And I think that applies to us, continues to apply, for me at least, is kindness. I think the other thing is putting yourself in another person's perspective. It's really easy to see somebody else in a different set of shoes and feel like, why do that? Why this? Why that? But when you can try, it's not always feasible or doable depending on the person, but practice that discipline, being like, oh, you had a run-in with one of your friends at school. Where do you think they were coming from? Why do they do that? Help people think about things from another person's perspective. Maybe they felt hurt. Maybe they felt bad, so they came after you. Was it right? No, right? But thinking about things from another person's perspective is a really tough thing to do. I mean, I have to do it even now. Like, with sometimes my customers do crazy stuff. I'm like, why? I'm like, okay, well, I bet they're coming from this perspective, right? They're thinking I forgot something, or they're thinking this, and they don't mean it in a mean way, but how can I help solve that? So when you think about something from another person's perspective, it helps. I think those are the two main ones that I would say, is kindness and thinking about things from others' perspectives. I don't know if anybody else has a third one, because it's always got to be a coming in threes, but those are the two main ones that I would probably come up with.
If you can speak to how you're mentoring your millennials who have not played sports and who didn't gain mental toughness through adversity and hard work, that sports provide us those opportunities for growth.
It's funny that you said that, because I actually thought about adding a question to my interview list when I hire someone. What team sports did you play when you were a kid? Or it doesn't matter when you played, because I've noticed that it's definitely a different type of person that comes onto to our team when I find out later. I usually don't ask that question, but when I find out later that they played team sports. And you're right, it's funny because I'm an older parent, as you have guessed, and one of my friends who's my age also has littles, like much littlers. And she was talking about that same thing. It's like, man, when we played sports, like it was, I mean, you had fun, it was still competitive, but the level is totally different now. And the expectations and the pressure that the kids have. And so she was making the comment, like, I just have my kids in the non-competitive, like we do this and like we have fun. But there's gonna come a point where they want that. And you as a parent are gonna have to, you don't wanna, I mean, do you wanna say no? Do you not wanna say no? Do you wanna let it go? I mean, those are tough things that, and when you hit those courses in raising people and children, you have to sort of make the judgment call what's right. But it's funny because, I think we're like, man, it wasn't like that. Like, we just had fun. It was definitely competitive, and you definitely were out to win, but it's definitely next level type stuff going on right now, and the pressure that they face is mounting. I think the thing is, like, the balance of skills. There's actually a student, I think he was a millennial, who was having trouble. He played competitive this was back in Texas that I have heard about, had played football on the football team at college and was having a really hard time getting a job because he didn't go to that next professional athletic level. And so I think he was out of a job for quite some time. And I think maybe a message around that is just in case, like, let's learn some other things on the side, because it's competitive athlete. They see the athletes, and it's hard to know that the percentage of people that make it to that level is different. And I remember that kid, because he was my little brother's age, and so that's why they had reached out to me. We were in Texas. They knew I was from Texas, and this is a college in Texas that he graduated football from. And so they were like, do you have any jobs? Do you know anybody in Texas? Do you have any opportunities? And he had probably been a year, out from not being able to find something. And so it's not meant to scare you, but it's meant to maybe say, just in case, maybe learn a couple other skill sets along the way, especially as you're in college, and go through that. As far as back to your question about working with the millennial types, I mean, I think that they want to, I've noticed that millennials want to have a contribution. They want to feel like they're doing something of value. I think everybody does to an extent, but I think it's like, I want that feeling of I made a difference. I want that feeling of I gave back, and I feel like I'm part of something that's giving that back. And so in my job, working with the younger types, because I think we're like, yeah, we do what we're told, we do a good job, we work hard, and we get it done. It's not that complicated. But I think it's like they want that side of feeling like they've contributed something back. And so for those that work with millennials in your case, I mean, you're much more high pressure than mine, but it's just, how do you teach them, man, this is giving back the life. This is doing this. This is helping, you're elevating yourself in this way. That's what I've noticed is really important. And so sometimes even like today, I have a team of people that's probably millennial age doing some of the workshops. Some of them are older, but some of them are not. And so I think, reminding them that they're part of something. They're part of a thing that's actually giving back. They're part of something that's adding value to the world. That's the stuff that they really care about. And I think it's great. I see kids doing volunteer work, and I'm like, man, I don't remember. Maybe I did. I probably did a couple volunteer things growing up just through schools and stuff. But I feel like now young people really want to give back and feel like they were part of this contribution back to society. So if you can make a connection, that's what I've tried to do with the younger people on our team, is help them draw that connection as you're part of this thing and you were the key player in that. That was part of a bigger objective. But yeah, I would say my generation, particularly the sports, is like, man, you just rolled. You just got stuff done. You just did what you were told. Like, show up to work. I mean, I had some people who were confused about like showing up to work on time and like some just things that I'm like, it seems like so basic, Like, I don't remember anybody having to tell me that. Like, I just went to work because I knew I had a job. But some of that stuff is just there's a softer side of it, and I think motivating them on something that they can feel like they're part of is what I've noticed can help.
Hi. So I have three daughters. I have a second grader, a sixth grader, and an eighth grader. And my question is about persistence and resilience. So since we live sort of in an instant gratification world these days, it's very easy for kids to see a problem and go, oh, I can't do it, and then they back away. And I know there's a lot of studies that specifically relate to women in business not trying new things. So when my sixth grader heard you say that you played piano and you didn't like it, she shot me this look. And actually, I saw a lot of parents getting these looks from their kids like, see, Mom, I don't like it and I shouldn't have to do it. So I, as a parent, think that it's in her interest to continue with piano. She thinks it's something she's not interested in. So at what point in time does the persistence and resilience in developing a task or a skill not equate with the interest? You know, where does that balance come? You know, as a parent, I have to make good decisions for my child because they're my child, but they also are developing their own personality. So how do you balance those? And especially, how does that translate? I'm worried in the future in the workforce. If I say, you don't like it, you can quit, what kind of personality am I developing for them when they get older?
That's a really good point. The thing that happened with me, or the way that it happened with me, is my mom kept signing me up for it, and I just didn't say no. I just did what I was told. But then I think probably, and I never asked her this directly, but I think it just faded a little bit because it was like there were other things that started to be of interest and I started to be more into, and it just started to sort of fade. So maybe, you know, that could be the way that things naturally go a little bit without it being a battle, because you're right, you don't want to teach giving up. You don't want them to be acceptable. It's like, throw up my arms and I just forgot, I don't know how to do stuff. And it's sometimes the case even with professionals on my team, is they get in that, well, I don't know what to do now. I don't know what to do. I need someone to tell me exactly what to do. And so teaching them like, okay, well, this is a thing that we have to do. And, you know, this is another thing that this is, you know, teaching them to try the new things. But I just think that it's, how do I say this? I think you have to sort of feel it out a little bit, feel out the individual, because that's a little bit of, parenting is like managing, you know, it's managing those things that they're gonna do, and looking at that individual and just deciding, sorry, that's what you're gonna do right now. And until you read something different, then I change course. I mean, it's the same thing with my own team. I'll tell them that's what you're doing. Then all of a sudden I'll start to see another skill develop. I'm like, okay, we're gonna shift gears now. Now you can work on this other thing. And I feel like it's not a little bit black and white, because that's just how managing people can tend to be. But like I said, in my case, I think with the piano thing, I just did what I was told. And then I feel like it just sort of faded out in the background, because other things took up more of that time. I'm not saying that would happen to everybody else. But yeah, my mom definitely was pushing me on it. And sometimes I'd be like, I don't really want to go, but I wasn't one to make a huge fuss about a whole lot. So maybe she got lucky in the sense that I didn't fight her back too hard on that. Probably fought harder on other topics as I got older.
Aloha, thanks for coming. I have a question about like your company specifically.
Sure.
The different groups on your team, as far as how it breaks down into the skills that they have. How many of those people on your team are college graduates? How many are not college graduates? How many have been hired just based on skills or certifications instead of degrees? Things like that. Just to kind of break down as far as the technology goes and what they know.
I think that in my world, as a consulting firm, there's a certain bar that I have to maintain. Our clients are paying us for a level of expertise. It's not the same as if I go get a job at, you know, ABC Stores in town. If I get a job at ABC Stores, I'm part of their company, and they have certain level of expectations on me. When ABC Stores comes to Pacific Point, they're not one of my clients, that's why I said it, but if they came to Pacific Point and they said, I need you to help me implement Salesforce, I have to bring a certain level of what they expect from me. So because of that, the way that our team is shaped is everyone does have a 4-year college degree. Everyone is developing, if they don't already have, certifications in Salesforce. Most of them have IT degrees, if not all. Not all. I would say there's a couple that don't. They have different like marketing or business-related degrees. So I feel like if you were to compare me, though, with a different type of company, the standard is a little bit different. But it's absolutely because of what we sell the time of our people. There's a certain bar that has to be at a certain level. So my client probably wouldn't be a huge fan, and whether or not it's right or wrong, they probably may not be like, I want to pay X number of dollars per hour for someone that didn't meet some checkbox, right? So from that side, I would say that all of our people have that. Now, that's not to say that I've met an amazing set of technologists who some of them don't even have high school degrees. And they're outstanding. I just simply can't do that for my company, but I've worked with, even at Salesforce, I just actually had somebody on my podcast recently, and she's a woman in technology, and she started doing like data entry or something like that, and then she moved into raising her hand and said, hey, I'll help out with Salesforce if you need help. And all of a sudden now she's a solution engineer at Salesforce, and she's amazing. And I don't think she graduated from college. So the point is, I don't think you have to have that, but I think it depends on what kind of career path you want and what's important. For the technology people on the team, if they're very deeply technical, I am looking for certifications, I am looking for qualifications. I'm looking for probably more, I value past experience and how the complexity of their projects were, more so than probably a certification. So for students, I always just experience is so much more valuable. But again, in my case, I do have to have a degree too, so that's just my world. Thank you. Thank you guys for taking the time, and thank you guys for doing the questions, because like I said, I wanted to kind of give you my backstory a little bit deeper, but I also wanted to make sure it was useful for you and knowing what maybe challenges you face and how I could help. So thanks for the time.